Hey, welcome to this tutorial about completing assignment 8 and analyzing data to answer a question about marine debris. When you open assignment 8 in the marine debris classroom, you'll see two attachments. The first one is a Google Doc that looks like this. That's gonna, first of all, ask you to come up with a question that you think you can use the data that you collected and other students collected when they were doing their marine debris surveys. There are a few examples here. You can choose one of those or come up with one of your own questions to answer. One great way to come up with a question is think about your experience while you're out at the beach. What did you notice while you were there? Did you notice any patterns that you think might show up in the data? Once you've picked a question, you can start looking at the data to answer it. The other attachment that you'll notice that is attached to the assignment is the marine debris reporting data for analysis. Ooh, that's a mouthful. And actually there's a lot here too. This shows all the data that students collected. So it's got student names who went out to do the surveys. It's got where they did their surveys. And then it has their data for what they actually found when they're out there. So how many plastic fragments they found, how many plastic fragments that were hard, how many plastic fragments that were foamed. You can always, if you're not quite sure what these say, you can click on the cell and more details will show up here in the formula bar at the top. I want to show you some of the advanced features that you can use in this spreadsheet in order to help you answer your question. One thing that you might want to do, for instance, is figure out how many total numbers of filmed plastic fragments were found at all the beaches. In order to do that, if you wanted to calculate an average, for instance, say in this cell here, you can do that by entering a formula that starts with an equals sign. And since we're trying to find the total number of plastic film fragments, the formula for that is sum. So equals sum, S-U-M, and then a parentheses. And we want to select the data from here all the way to here. It says AA2. This is AA2 through AA8. This is cell AA8. We can finish the parentheses, press enter. Da, 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 da. So now we have the total number of filmed plastic fragments. Cool, that's handy. You can do that with any of these categories you might need. We can do the same thing across a row. So for instance, if we wanted to find out, well, how many total pieces of debris were found at this one beach, represented by this top row. Well, let's go all the way to the end of the row. I've already added a title for this column. It's going to be total. We can do the same thing we did before, equals sum of, now we need to select everything out here all the way from AA2, all the way until, let's go BU2. If you get an error like this, something's wrong. You can double click in there to edit, and I know I'm missing AA2 until BU2. Okay, there it is. So 103 pieces, fragments found at that first beach. Here's another cool feature. If you wanted to identify how many fragments are found at in total at each of the beaches, you can actually copy this formula by clicking and dragging down at the lower right-hand corner, and it automatically copies the formula into each cell here. Nifty. Okay, and then one more formula I want to show you. Maybe you're not interested in finding the total number of debris found at each beach, but rather you think an average is a better way to answer your question. Well, you can edit this formula to include not sum, but average. And in that case, it's done just that. The average number of plastic fragments found at a beach is 10.142. When you get ready to graph your data, I'm going to recommend making a kind of simplified data table. You can actually do it right here, kind of at the bottom of the spreadsheet that you already have. If you want to create another sheet, you can add a sheet down here and get a blank fresh sheet in a new tab. But I'm going to do this. My question that I'm interested in answering is, how do the different plastic fragments compare? How did the number of hard fragments compare to foamed compared to film? I'm going to create a couple of columns here for my simplified data table. The first one is going to be type of plastic fragment. The next one is going to be number. Actually, it's going to be average number of fragments found. Okay, so with this kind of simplified data table, I can insert a chart now. I want to select all of the data that's here. If I select in the upper left-hand corner, hold down the Shift key, and then select in the lower right-hand. Okay, I've got all my data selected. Insert a chart. And Google's going to guess at a chart that I might want, and it did a pretty darn good job, actually. We've got 3 different categories of plastic fragments. We've got the average number of fragments found. Nice, it's a bar chart. So the only thing I'm going to change here is the title. You can title this with a question that you're trying to answer. That's a good way to go. I like titles that are really descriptive. And so you could say something like average number of Once you've got your chart looking like you want it, by the way, you can change a lot of these different colors and different ways that these bars are displayed. And you can do that after you double click on the graph. You can do that in the customize section and in the setup section. So you might want to play around with this, make it look a way that's appealing to you. But then once you get it, you can click the 3 dots, this drop down menu, and copy chart. Once you've copied the chart, go ahead and paste it in here, your Google Doc. Okay, then go ahead and answer some of these other questions. One of the categories is sources of error. I want you to be really thoughtful with these sources of error. You've got some kind of questions that could help guide you. But basically, you're trying to figure out how well did I answer the question? Is there anything here about the graph that I created that might be misleading? And it could be things like, well, it's more likely to find hard plastic fragments at the beach than film plastic fragments. And so there might actually be more film plastic fragments at the beach, but they were commonly overlooked by students. That would be an example of a source of error. Another would be thinking about the fact that, well, for this, I only analyzed 5 beaches, and the beaches that I analyzed might have been characteristically grouped in a certain way. They're not representative of all the beaches, the different beach types that are found in the Salish Sea. And so in different beach types, maybe filmed fragments were more common. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful. As you're analyzing your data, please reach out to your instructor sooner rather than later if you want some help in figuring out how to use the data to answer your question. Good luck, have fun.